your open project, if you haven't looked through this, I would suggest you, read it. Ultimately, I don't want you, this is the big thing right here. I already had a question about this. I don't want you to download a template and just pop in your own pictures, text, and video, like we did in the one exercise. You should be taking some of the elements that that might be in a template, or some elements that you create on your own, and really make it something that's unique to you and for the message you want to convey. If you want to use some of these elements here, so these are elements that I've pulled together from different templates. As you can look at them, there's some particles here, and if you just look at them, they're just like these very strange sort of thing, but just notice that they are, let me see if I can play one of these. I don't want to go too much into detail here, but there's just some noise generators, and I don't remember what's in that. So these are just like some cool pre-renders from an open I put together years ago. And so you can pull a lot of these elements into your open, and I don't mind you doing that. Here's some mats and lines, and so you can pull some of these things and create your own sort of mats. And that's what I did. I just wanted to show you a very basic demonstration of what I've done. Remember, I think some of you aren't downloading some of this stuff correctly. If you want to download a folder from Adobe Premiere, make sure that if the folder is really big, then you want to download it maybe piece by piece. But some people aren't looking at the fact that there are folders along with some of these larger folders. So what I've done here is, I mean, this is just cheesy, but this is pulling several of the lessons we've done the past couple of weeks together. So this is pulling two different images. This is the it's just a bell. It's a ringing of a bell, and then this is a picture. So if you look at these, if I show these in isolation, this is the picture, and this is the mindfulness bell. And so what I've done is I've added some different elements to there, and then I've added the this is the, let me pull these closer. This is the lines map, but it looks different because if you look at this is the original source. But if you look at it in its edited form, it looks much different because I've added some things to it. Okay, so this is the lines 001 MOV file, and what I did was I just copied it, and of course, if you have particular attributes, if you've added to a particular clip and you just want to duplicate it, you just would, I think it's Option Drag. So if you hit Option Drag, that just basically copies, and so notice that this is just a copy of this in this file, is this file, and it keeps all of those different. As you can see in Effect Controls, it still adds that Ultra key that I added in there. So the first thing we'll do is we need to create a sequence, and so you'll pull all of your elements into your project. And I don't know why some of you prefer to use the icon view, but with a screen as small as yours, I prefer this list view because it allows you to scroll a lot easier. But it really is your choice. It just makes me crazy when I see these big, huge icons and you guys can't find your video. But again, that's your choice. So I'm going to first take my little mindfulness bell and where is that sequence anyway? Oh, there it is. So I'm going to create a sequence based on the, oops, that's me. It was a project I created. So I'm going to set some ins and out points. I don't want to make this just a couple of seconds long. Okay. And in that way I have my settings correct for my entire sequence based on the, oh, this is interesting, different frames per second. So now I have like this video of my bell. And so this in itself might be great. I mean, this is just literally my ringing a bell. And so it's 29 seconds and your project is only going to be about 10 seconds. So it's better to work with a larger, or basically a zoomed in timeline here. And you might want to start with several images or several pieces of video similar to the lessons from a couple of weeks ago when they had just a bunch of images that are set to be the background. And so you might want to have, like, if you're putting a sports show together, a sports open together, you'll put some images there, and then you might want to have text and other images that are flying around around it. But maybe you might want to add some of those elements. So this is the lines MOV file, okay? And I'm actually, because I know what I'm going to be doing, so I'm actually going to, so if you look at this lines MOV file, it has some greens and some reds and stuff. So I'm going to actually put this up top here, and then I'm just going to option drag. So I'm just creating multiple, actually I'm going to do that later, so because I want to create attributes for that. So ultimately this project looks like this right now. So that doesn't do us any good. So what we're going to do is we want to key out either the reds or whatever is the dominant color, and it adds this interesting little effect over it. So that's your, you can use any of these effects, but I'm going to use the Ultra key. And you can try, my suggestion is don't just use everything that I'm doing. This is your own creative project. So do play around with the software and see what you come up with. So I'm going to key out this, it's going to turn a funky color. So see if it'll allow it to, why is it not doing it? Okay, it's doing it. I want it to get to that color. There it is. So see how that key color, so it's keying out that green. So you can see the image in the background. You see that? You can see that image in the background. And then what I did was I played around with some of these transparencies. So you can make it a little bit more transparent, a little bit more. So see how it's kind of creeping in there. And you can add, so you can just do some adjustments in your parameters, and I forget exactly what I've done, what I did to this. But anyway, so you play around with some of these parameters, and so that way you get this, you know, kind of weird effect going on. So then we'll add our other image in here. So if you notice that if I double click it, I actually, this is actually a smaller image, but I'm going to put this into, put this into video 2. So as you notice now, this is my background. So I don't want that. So what I'll do is I'm going to add a track matte key. And so you'll see what that does in a second. Go to my effects, you go to track matte, and you'll add that track matte key to that life clip. And then we'll go back to effect controls. And so notice so you have to add that matte in there. So what is going to be our matte? We want to have this be our matte in video 3. So now we have something a little bit different going on. Now, of course, I have to adjust the size of this picture. So I'm going to scale it. Because I think this video was a 1080i, if I'm not mistaken. So then we have a little bit of a different look. So we have this life image, kind of the main picture, but then we have kind of peeking in is this mindfulness bell in there. Okay. So now let's play around with your blend mode. And you can see, you can also adjust the opacity, by the way. You can reduce it somewhat, so then you have some floating of one to the other. So there, it's basically like a, I don't want to say it's a cross dissolve, but it mimics a cross dissolve. And then you can decide if you want to adjust your blend mode. So you'll see these different things like the lighten blend mode. So then you just have like these interesting things going on that make your video look different. So you might like that and decide, okay, that's a really cool clip, okay? And so there's a couple ways that you can kind of duplicate that. So one thing you could do is you can nest this. And of course, if you have nesting on here, I mean, I can nest all of these together and it would be moving as one clip. So you go clip and then nest, and you can nest that sequence. So basically this would be a sequence, but this makes no difference. I can keep this, let me see, bell 1, and then you can continue working on with this same sequence, okay? But so that's just one way that you can start working on a larger piece that has a bunch of elements in there. So if I double click this, you'll notice that line comes back in. So as you can see, this bell is now a separate sequence, but this is just the same sequence anyway. So if I go back, and so say if I want to create, so this is a sequence here, okay? And so if I wanted to add that one sequence in here, so let me trim this up a little bit. So if I wanted to add that one sequence I just created, I mean, it's essentially this right here, but I can then, so this is a nested sequence, but it looks a lot like this sequence because they're basically the same. But as you can see, if I drag this sequence, so this is make sure you have this nested clicked. So then I can add this entire sequence onto the end. So that's what, when we had the nesting going on several weeks ago. A lot of people were just nesting the one sequence, but that doesn't make any sense because there's no point in nesting this sequence if you're just going to be working with other sequences anyway, because they're going to show up here as a separate sequence. But if you want to work with this same sequence here, so if I want to still work with this sequence and just keep adding on to this same sequence with other sequences, then I don't see a problem. Just for simplification purposes is that you nest all these clips together so they work and operate as one. And ultimately, so you'll see this is just very similar. This is, I didn't add to the other stuff. But you see how that it's just a little bit different. And so then if you want to option drag, so if I option drag this, it basically creates the exact same thing. And then you can go in and make some adjustments as need be. But ultimately, your open should consist of just several mini clips of like a second or two. And the more complex the elements in your sequence, that's just what makes it more visually interesting. Because again, you're supposed to capture this audience in 10 seconds, and that's the goal, to make it as interesting visually as possible because you don't have a lot of time.